The 1960s were considered the golden era of motorcycles. Triumph launched the Bonneville. Honda shocked the world with the CB750, and Harley-Davidson cemented its image as the street hero. But while the big names dominated headlines, a few other machines, quieter, weirder, and bold, also emerged, made noise, and then vanished without a trace. These bikes were not built to please the masses. They were born from passion, engineering challenges, or simply to prove one thing: we can do it too, and maybe even do it better. They might have failed in sales or marketing, but they deserve a rightful place in motorcycle history. And now, let's uncover 12 legendary motorcycles from the 1960s that you probably never knew about, but definitely won't forget after today. Bridgestone 350 GTR. You may know Bridgestone as a tire company, but in the 1960s, they built one of the smartest motorcycles Japan ever produced. It was not made to generate profit, but to prove they could beat anyone, even Honda, if they wanted to. The result was the 350 GTR, a bold display of engineering from a company not known for motorcycles. The bike featured a 345 cubic centimeter two-stroke twin engine with separate rotary disc valves for each cylinder. The setup was so rare that it puzzled most mechanics outside a racetrack. It made just 37 horsepower, but with only 350 pounds to carry, it could reach nearly 100 miles per hour. In 1967, that was punching above its weight. Bridgestone did not stop at performance. They included a 6-speed gearbox, electric start, and adjustable oil injection. The fit and finish were exceptional, to the point where some thought it was overbuilt. And that became a problem. Bridgestone made their money from tires, not motorcycles. Bikes like the 350 GTR competed directly with major clients such as Honda and Yamaha. Business pressure forced them to shut the line down. Munch Mammoth 1200 TTS. Perhaps no motorcycle has ever entered the world with such bold defiance. A German engineer decided to pull the engine straight out of an NSU Prinz car, stuff it into a motorcycle frame, and unleash a mad machine called the Mammoth. The air-cooled 1,177 cubic centimeter four-cylinder engine made around 88 horsepower. In the mid-1960s, when most bikes hovered around 40 to 50 horsepower, that number was outrageous. Despite weighing nearly 650 pounds, the Mammoth could outrun many lighter competitors with a top speed north of 130 miles per hour. Friedel Munch, the eccentric genius behind it, hand-built each one. He used magnesium wheels, massive drum brakes that looked like they belonged on a train, and engineering touches far ahead of their time. But the high cost made it inaccessible. Fewer than 500 units were ever produced, making it a boutique toy for riders who thought Vincent Black Shadows were too mainstream. Honda CB77 Superhawk. Released in 1961, the Superhawk featured a 305 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine that revved to 9,000 revolutions per minute and produced 28 horsepower. Weighing just around 365 pounds, it could reach speeds between 100 and 105 miles per hour. That was enough performance to embarrass many British 500cc machines and make the 250cc class question its purpose. But the CB77 was not just about power. It was a masterclass in smart engineering. Electric start, 12-volt electrics, a smooth 4-speed gearbox, dual overhead cams, and a pressed steel frame that was stiff and reliable. While other bikes struggled with kickstarters and mechanical quirks, the Superhawk delivered everyday dependability with a touch of sophistication. This bike did more than impress racers. It inspired author Robert Pirsig on his cross-country journey that later became the classic book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Yet the CB77 was soon buried by its own sibling, the CB750, Bultaco Metralla MK2. Born in Franco-era Spain, it was not built to be cute or quiet. It was built to be fast, and it did that frighteningly well. With a 250 cubic centimeter two-stroke engine, making 32 horsepower at 8,000 revolutions per minute and weighing just 247 pounds, this bike was a pocket rocket for the brave. A top speed of over 100 miles per hour let it outrun many 500 and even 650 bikes on twisty roads. The Metralla did not need big displacement. It needed skill and guts. With low handlebars, a compact frame, and minimalist bodywork, it looked like a legal GP race bike stripped to its essentials. Every detail served performance. The 5-speed gearbox was slick. The brakes barely did the job, but the ride was razor-sharp. This was not a bike for beginners. It demanded an alert, decisive rider ready for high-speed chaos. So why is it not well known outside vintage racing circles? Because it was Spanish. And when Japan flooded the market with faster, cheaper, and easier machines, the Metralla faded. Rickman Matise. The Rickman Matise is unlike any other motorcycle on this list. That is because it was not really a finished bike. It was an idea, a frame, and a challenge. What you got when you bought a Rickman was not a complete machine, but a foundation to build your ideal weapon. Brothers Don and Derek Rickman, both former motocross racers, were tired of flexy frames, weak geometry, and suspension that felt like it came from a toy store. They decided to create a new frame using nickel-plated Reynolds 531 steel tubing. It was light, stiff, and ahead of its time. When paired with engines from Triumph, BSA, Matchless, or Honda, the Rickman Matise became a serious contender in off-road competition. There was no factory brand, no dealership, and no flashy marketing. Yet the Matise showed up at races and earned the respect of professionals. Steve McQueen once called it the best handling bike he ever owned. That praise came from a man who could buy anything he wanted. Velocette Venom Thruxton. If any motorcycle represents the final roar of hand-built British craftsmanship, it is the Velocette Venom Thruxton. At its heart was a 499 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder engine. It may sound basic, but the Thruxton version was tuned to produce 41 horsepower and reach a top speed of around 110 miles per hour. For a simple thumper, that was near miraculous. The bike weighed just around 390 pounds, making it light enough to fly past rivals in long-distance races. It came with rear-set foot pegs, clip-on handlebars, a large Amal GP carburetor, and an upgraded cylinder head. This was a factory racer disguised as a street-legal machine. All units were built in very limited numbers, following the classic hand-built tradition. Why did it disappear? Because the times changed. By the late 1960s, the Japanese motorcycle wave had arrived in full force. Velocette could not scale up and soon folded. Moto Morini V-twin prototype. In the late 1960s, while many European manufacturers were still wrestling with single-cylinder designs and carb tuning in dimly lit workshops, Moto Morini quietly did something almost no one expected. They built a small experimental motorcycle, just 344 cubic centimeters in displacement, but filled with engineering ideas far ahead of its time. At its core was a 72-degree V-twin engine with heron heads, a 6-speed gearbox, and an incredibly compact overall footprint. The power was not overwhelming. The top speed was not shocking, but the ride felt light, precise and stable, as if you were piloting a machine built for a future yet to arrive. This bike never entered full production during the 1960s. It was not until the early 1970s that Morini officially launched the 3.5 series, based directly on this prototype. Royal Enfield Interceptor MK2. Imagine you are an American rider in the mid-1960s. You are tired of heavy, hot and slow V-twins. Then suddenly, a machine from England shows up. It looks lean, rugged, and when you twist the throttle, it launches forward, like it is leaving an entire outdated generation behind. The Interceptor MK2 was not built to be gentle. It was Royal Enfield's declaration of war on the American market, where Harley-Davidson ruled the streets. With a 750 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, 50 horsepower, and a top speed over 110 miles per hour, it was the most powerful bike Enfield had produced at the time. But its magic was not in the numbers, it was in the spirit. This was a bike that brought British rebellion to the heart of California. Riders turned it into flat trackers, drag racers, or simply fast road machines that did not follow the rules. The Interceptor MK2 did not fail because it was weak. It failed because the world was not ready for it at the right time. While Enfield was still searching for a way into the American market, Japanese motorcycles began appearing on every street. They were smoother, easier to maintain, and backed by dealers coast to coast. Meanwhile, the Interceptor, strong and striking as it was, had no one to carry it forward. Kawasaki W1. In 1966, when Japanese motorcycle brands were still viewed as apprentices in the global industry, Kawasaki launched a bike that made the Western world take notice. It was not built to break the rules. It was built to do what others were doing, only better. And the W1 succeeded. Based on the BSAA7 design, but extensively reworked, the Kawasaki W1 used a 624 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine, producing around 49 horsepower and topping out at over 110 miles per hour. It was the largest displacement four-stroke motorcycle ever built in Japan at the time. But the most impressive thing was not the power, it was the refinement. The W1 ran smoother than any British twin. It started easily, held its oil well, vibrated less, and had a level of finish that made European bikes look like they were assembled with hammers and nails. Kawasaki knew exactly who they were targeting, and they marketed the W1 in the United States as the ideal alternative to Triumph and BSA. The W1 did not stay in the spotlight for long. Just a few years later, Kawasaki released the H1 two-stroke and the legendary Z1 four-cylinder. Both were faster, more advanced, and made the W1 seem like a polite draft version. Laverda 650 GT. In the mid-1960s, Laverda's engineering team took apart the Honda CB77, Norton 650 SS, and BMW R69S. They did not copy. They picked the best elements and blended them into a new design. The result was a 654 cubic centimeter parallel twin engine making around 50 horsepower, a 5-speed gearbox, and a stiff chassis that did not twist in corners. It was not the fastest, the cheapest, or the most advertised bike, but it was incredibly durable. Many early 650 GTs are still running today with minimal restoration. It had Japanese electrics, a hardened crankshaft, and no room for cheap shortcuts. This was a bike built for riders who wanted to live with it, not just follow a trend. Only around 50 units were made before Laverda shifted focus to their 750cc line. The The racing wins and global fame came later, but it all began with this quiet 650. Without the 650 GT, Laverda might never have entered its golden era. Gilera 124-5V. Gilera was once a legendary name in Grand Prix racing, but by the late 1960s, that glory was fading. The company had withdrawn from competition, sales were dropping, and it struggled to stay alive as Japanese bikes began their rapid ascent. In that context, the Gilera 124 was born quietly and with quiet dignity. At first glance, it looked like a simple commuter bike. But beneath the modest exterior lay one of the most refined small-displacement engines of its time. A 4-stroke single-cylinder engine with a 5-speed gearbox, high revving nature, and a dry weight of just 218 pounds. It produced 10 horsepower at 8,500 revolutions per minute. That might not sound impressive, but the riding experience was entirely different. It accelerated smoothly, shifted gently, and handled like a miniature Grand Prix machine. Yet it was stable enough to ride to work every morning. This was the kind of bike that made you smile, climbing a small hill, not scream for top speed. It did not promise greatness, but it delivered excellence in every small detail. Unfortunately, Gilera was nearing its end. The company was acquired by Piaggio in the early 1970s, and the 5V series was soon shelved. Norton P11. The Norton P11 came to life in a California workshop, where desert racers did not care about elegance. They needed raw power. They did not want fine lines. They wanted something that could survive the harshest western sands. The P11 was a bold mashup. Its frame came from the matchless G85 CS, light and rigid, while the engine was Norton's 750 cubic centimeter Atlas twin, a torque-heavy parallel twin with serious punch. High-mounted pipes, long travel suspension, and stripped-down bodywork made the P11 a bare-knuckle beast in the off-road world. The bike weighed just around 375 pounds, but made 55 horsepower. That power-to-weight ratio turned it into a sand-slinging animal. The handling was harsh. The seat felt like a stone slab, and road feedback could numb your hands within miles. And yet, it was strangely irresistible. But when Norton noticed how many riders were turning Atlas engines into desert bikes, they decided to make it official. A few years later, it was replaced by the Commando. Not every motorcycle needs to be famous to become legendary. Some machines were not born for sales charts, but for passion, experimentation, or simply the desire to create something different. The bikes you just discovered may not appear in major museums, may not be featured in ads, and may not be the dreams of the masses. But they existed. They roared down real roads, and they made people turn their heads. That is the true value of forgotten legends. They do not need the spotlight. They just need someone to remember and understand why they were special. Have you heard of any of the bikes on this list before? Or do you know another motorcycle that deserves to be mentioned? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit like if you enjoyed the video, share it to spread the story, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next ride.